everyone, welcome to our fourth and our last Family Creative Learning online workshop. I'm Rika Rose.
And I'm Saskia.
And we're from the Family Creative Learning team at the MIT Media Lab. What you're watching right now is a pre-recorded video, but we're here right in the chat, so feel free to ask questions and make comments, and we'll be here right with you.
So last week in our online workshop, we reviewed Family Workshops 1 and 2, where we welcome families to the workshop series. We introduce them to Scratch and Makey technologies. And also in last week's workshops, we had some really great discussions in our breakout groups.
Yeah, lots of great questions.
And there are also a ton of great questions on the Google Plus community right now, so if you haven't checked that out in a while, definitely do so. And also in the Google Plus community, there's a recap of last week's workshop too, so if you missed that, you can watch our video there.
And also some shared notes that people took during our breakout groups, so you can see the things that we talked about and the great questions that people shared. And there's also one more thing. There's a lot more detail, of course, in the facilitator guide. So if you hadn't had a chance, you can find almost any kind of detail in there as well. So there's a link to download that above the chat. Cool. So this week, we're going to talk about workshops 3, 4, and 5, with 5 being the community showcase. And workshops 3 and 4 are an opportunity for families to now work together and make a project for the community showcase. So we'll go over those workshops in this online workshop. I know, lots of workshop words. So yeah, I don't think, is there anything else?
No, let's do it.
Yeah. All right, so workshop 3 and 4, we're going to talk about them together because these are the workshops where the families are working on their family project for the community showcase. And like we said before, each workshop is split up into 4 parts: eat, meet, make, and share. And we'll talk about those 4 parts as we talk about these workshops. And I'm going to hand it off to Saskia to talk about eat.
So eat, as always, is the first part of every workshop, and that's when the families are entering the workshop, they're getting food, they're sitting down and having casual conversations with each other. And this is a really great time for the families to not only connect with each other, but to connect with the facilitators and just have normal conversations. And this is an especially helpful time if you don't know your families prior to the workshop series. So this is where you can get to know their interests, start connecting people. For example, if somebody starts talking about basketball, you can gauge if other people on the table are interested in basketball, and it's just a really wonderful time to start working together as a community.
Yeah, I'll share one little story. One time we ordered Dominican food, and as I was eating the Dominican food, I realized it tastes a lot like Filipino food, and so we just got onto me and the other parents and the kids just talking about like who's fried chicken or who's stews, and it was a really great experience.
That's awesome. Cool. And so after eating, families split off into groups to meet.
Yeah, so in meet, this is a time where we split up the parents and the kids, and we check in with them separately. We ask them about how did last week's workshop go. We use this time to talk about this week's workshop. So for example, in 3 and 4, we start to prepare them like, so these are workshops where you're going to start working together. You know, how do you feel about that? What kinds of activities do you do where you work together? What do you often do? How do you work together? And you know, this is also where we might say with the parents like, oh, you might, you know, it's okay to want to co-create with your kids. I know you came here for them, but you might want to suggest ideas and whatnot. And with the kids, we might say like, oh, you know, I know you're so excited, but, you know, make sure to ask your other family members what their ideas are, or if they seem a little confused, you might want to take a moment to explain to them what's going on. So this kind of gives them that opportunity. And last week people asked us like, what's the point of meet? Like it seems a little counterintuitive, like this is a family workshop, why are you splitting up the parents and the kids? And with these activities that we do with them, it gives them an opportunity to just talk with their peers about things that they're thinking about or feeling about in the experience, or just like a lot of the ideas that we're touching on in the experience. For example, for the parents, it's like so valuable for them to talk to other parents whose kids have similar interests around technology, and they could share things that they're observing, like, oh, you know, they seem a little addicted to this thing called Minecraft, and the parents are like, yeah, I know what you mean, and that's really powerful for the parents to feel that they're not alone in their feelings or anxieties around what their kids are doing with technology. But it's also even more powerful when a parent can say, like, actually, like, this is what I do, or you might want to try to do this with them. And it gives them that, more strategies in their kind of toolbox of things that they could do with their kids. And for the kids, like, it's a time for them to just, like, be kids in front of other kids, and get a sense of, how they think about these kinds of activities with their families, like any frustrations that they might have or things that they're excited to try out. So it's a really great opportunity to build bonds across families with their peers in the room. Before, we didn't have meets, and families would just kind of stick together throughout the whole workshops, and we thought, wow, what a really lost opportunity to connect families in the same neighborhood who really have a lot of similar interests and things that they're thinking about and feeling around this experience. So Meet is a great opportunity for that.
Definitely.
So after Meet, we Make, which is the bulk of the workshop.
So in workshops 3 and 4, families are starting to work on their projects that they're going to show in the community showcase. And it's really helpful to brainstorm these ideas beforehand, and even more helpful if you're centering them around a theme. So sometimes we choose themes for our family showcases, like carnival or instruments, so their creativity kind of flows within these constraints. So again, in these 2 workshops, they're brainstorming, they're starting to make their projects, and this is a really great time to whip out those facilitator tips and start observing the family dynamics, because the families are working together for the first time, and that might go really smoothly for some families. It might be a little bit of a rougher start for other families. So paying attention to family dynamics during this time is really crucial. And also, there are a ton of different kinds of facilitator tips that you can utilize during this time.
Yeah, I mean, for example, if like a family seems like they're having a hard time coming to a decision on what they want to do because so many different people want to do it, you might want to talk with them and help them talk out loud their ideas and help them reach a compromise with that as well. Something that you might also observe across these 2 workshops is how their projects develop. So some families might have trouble coming up with ideas, and sitting with them and helping them surface their interests, which is a facilitator fundamentals. You might ask them what they like to do together. If the theme is carnival, you might ask them, have you been to a carnival before? What are activities that you've really enjoyed? Some families might have really ambitious ideas, and by workshop 4 they're like not quite there yet, so they're overwhelmed and they're getting nervous that they're not going to finish. So you might want to sit with them and help them reach a compromise, like maybe instead of something going across the room when you press this button, like maybe the button lights up. So you might just
or maybe instead of creating an entire rock band, you just focus on 1 instrument or 2 instruments.
Yeah, and then you might have the family who's actually done a lot, but they feel really insecure. They're like, oh, I just did this thing, like it's kind of whatever. And that facilitator tip of like showing authentic enthusiasm, verbalizing what they accomplish, like really just saying like, no, you did so much, and like using the shares and bringing other people in, other facilitators to check it out. Like,
I've seen that be really, really powerful with a family that wasn't quite sure about their Scratch project, and coming in and just saying like, look what you created. It gets them so pumped about what they created, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So after families are making their work in both workshops 3 and 4, we share.
Yeah, so share is a really good time to help them kind of verbalize what they're thinking for their project, what they've been able to work on together so far, to help them dive deeper with their ideas. So really using the share in workshop 3, for example, to start sharing their ideas and showing what they've developed so far, and asking everyone else like, what else might they do? Do you have suggestions? Like if they seem like they're almost done, because you also have the family that will be like, yeah, we're done. You could use the share as a time to like ask people like, what more could they do, or is there something that they could add on? This is a great time also for them to practice talking about their projects. So when it comes to the community showcase, it's not like it's not a huge surprise for them to start
they've already gone through the motions of what it's like to share their work.
Yeah, and again, you might have some people who are really nervous to share and just kind of, as we said in workshops 1 and 2, really emphasizing that this is about sharing your process and your work in progress. And if you can always use the question of like, if you had more time, what would you have done? And this is really kind of re-emphasizing that is important too. So that's like the 4 parts of the workshops 3 and 4. If you're finding that some families need more time, you might have some bonus days, some extra days where they could come in and finish up their project.
That are optional.
Yeah, that are optional. And one question that we got last week when we were talking about workshops 1 and 2 is like, how do you know they're learning? And this is something that we think a lot about and we talk a lot about as a facilitation team. And there's a reason why we do that because, because obviously we care about it, but also our methods for understanding how families are learning are a bit more observational and qualitative, where we look carefully at 3 aspects of their experience, and we look at their projects, their interactions, and also their reflections. And with their projects, we look carefully at how their project develops, like what sort of elements do they have, how is it progressing, are they adding more kind of functionality to it, how invested do they feel in their project. With their interactions, we look at, who's been holding the materials, and do they seem to be talking about their ideas together? Do they seem to be having fun? Like, do they feel like, when they come into the room, do they still look nervous, or are they like settling in on their own? And then with their reflections, we have lots of informal conversations with family members, and for us, we keep in touch with them, and we ask them like what they thought about the experience, and if they're sharing reflections about how they see themselves and how they're seeing the tools, and are those perspectives changing or evolving? And this is just a snippet of some of the things that we think about. There's 2 pages in the guide where we talk about this more deeply, talking about some of the mathematical and computational ideas that they're developing, and their communication and collaboration skills, and also the questions that we ask ourselves when we're trying to assess how families are doing.
Yeah. Definitely check those 2 pages out if you haven't already.
Cool. So that was a quick review of 3 and 4. We're going to take a quick break, about a minute or 2, so that you can ask questions in the text chat, and we're going to try to answer them, but we'll also collect them for the breakout groups, which are going to happen after we talk about the next workshop. So we would love to see your questions about workshops 3 and 4.
All right. We'll be back in a minute. Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks so much for your questions on workshops 3 and 4. If we didn't get to answer them in the chat, we can answer them in our breakout sessions.
Cool, so we'll talk about workshop 5 now, which is the community showcase. This is such a great time to celebrate the families and show all the things that they've accomplished through this series. And this is something that you might want to start preparing for actually as soon as you start the workshops. Help to recruit different kinds of people that could be involved in this showcase. For example, around workshops 3, you might hand out flyers for the families to share with people in their network, other families, friends. You might encourage the kids to invite their teachers to see what they've been up to. It's a great opportunity for educators who want to learn more about these ideas and these tools. This is also a time for you to kind of share with your community what family creative learning is and all the cool things that families can do and ways that other people like educators might want to share this in their learning environments.
So when you're thinking about your showcase, thinking about the space is really important, and you're going to want to maybe rearrange the space that you're in to accommodate the family guests that are there, and to make sure that everybody's flowing around the room in a really smooth way. So rearranging the room is really important, and thinking about how your families are going to share is also important. So maybe you want to do a gallery style, so each of the groups are walking around individually to families, or if you have a smaller group, then maybe a presentation might work. It's all about the number of people in the room and what works best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this community showcase is also different from the other workshops in that there's no eat, meet, make, and share. There's definitely a lot of sharing.
A lot of sharing.
You might want to provide some food for the guests who arrive, and some, so maybe eating and sharing. Mm-hmm. Something that you might want to help the guests get oriented in the space, because they haven't been with you the last 4 workshops, so they're not sure what to expect. You might create like a guide or a program for them to use to help them orient them in the room, to also give them a set of questions they can ask each of the families about their projects. We can share a program that we made in this last workshop series that we did in the Google Plus community to give you an idea of what that looks like.
And even before the workshop, it's really helpful to, not before the workshop, before the showcase happens, it's helpful to just remind the families how to share their work. So they're already experienced in sharing their projects and talking about their projects, but sitting them down before the new members come in to see their work and reminding them about how to show their work is really helpful, and how to talk about their projects and their process. And you also might want to remind families where to physically be in the room. So just get them in the showcase mentality, and give them that ownership over their project and their ownership over their station, and just make sure that everybody's on the same page before the showcase begins.
Cool. So those are some tips to help you think about preparing for the community showcase. And so now we'll talk about some things that you might do during the showcase. So at the start, you might have some sort of welcome to kind of, again, orient the guests and kind of get them excited for about what they're about to do, share some questions that they might ask. If you've been taking documentation throughout the workshops, you might want to do like a fun video to give the visitors a feel for what the workshops were like, or do some sort of photo slideshow.
We can also share the video that we made last year too.
Yeah,
in Google
yeah.
Plus.
I think it's just a great way to get people's kind of spirit in the right place for these workshops.
And also during the showcase, it's really fun to celebrate the families and their work. And this is maybe something that they're not expecting, because they're showing their work, but the facilitators are also there to celebrate the families. So in our workshops, we individually recognize each of the families by giving them a little gift. We made collages from some of the photos that we took of the families, and I think this is really, really meaningful for the families to receive this collage. One said that she was going to go home and immediately frame it, so that's a really fun thing to do too. And also make sure to take a group photo. This is something that can easily be forgotten, but it's so great to be able to have a photo of everybody happy and proud of their work. And then at the end of the showcase, you might want to spend some time talking with the families about your follow-up plans. So maybe you have a reunion planned in the next month for families to get back together for a night, or maybe you have a different way to keep in touch with the families, but just make sure that they have something to hold on to at the end of the showcase.
Yeah, you can always tell at the end that you did a good job when the families linger a little bit when you're cleaning up, because you could tell that, they finally got in this routine of the 5 workshops, and it's like, it's over.
Yeah.
So it's great to have some sort of follow-up plan. You might want to encourage them to take home the design journals as well. Yeah, so these are some things that we just kind of cherry pick some things about the community showcase. There's a lot more detail in the facilitator guide, and we really encourage you to ask questions, which brings us to another 1 to 2 minute break where we want to encourage you to ask questions about the community showcase or workshop 5, which we'll also kind of bring into our breakout groups.
All right, enjoy the music. Hi everybody, welcome back, and thanks so much for your questions on Workshop 5. If we didn't get to answer them in the chat, we can answer them in our breakout sessions. So one thing to keep in mind when you are planning Workshop 5, the showcase, is that this is a day to celebrate your families. So you're celebrating your families, you're celebrating their progress and their work, and that should be the core and the spirit of this day.
Cool, so that wraps up our review of the 5 workshops of family creative learning. And just to kind of end with is a question we often get is what to do when things don't go as planned, and they often don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing to remember is that it's totally fine. It's okay.
Yeah, it is.
And it's important to be open and flexible to the things that emerge in the workshops.
And when things don't go as planned, it's important to keep your goals in mind. They're there for a reason. And the goals should drive you, as you do have to make those decisions on the fly.
Yeah, one thing that I find is really helpful is to check in with the facilitation team and ask them to first share an observation, like, I feel like we need more time, like, should we give it another 10 minutes, or should we just jump right in? And often it's probably good to kind of stick to the plan because you've thought a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you an example is in the past, something that would happen is like, and this is a good thing because they're really engaged in Make, like they really want to keep working on their projects. And like when you announce like, okay, in 5 minutes we're gonna share, there's like this panic.
You know, like, oh no, I'm not done.
I know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really tempting to be like, okay, maybe we should skip share this time and you know do it next week. Mm-hmm. And we've done that. And we realized that it was actually taking away a little bit their opportunity to talk about their project, to get more suggestions, to reflect on things that they might do next. And but there have been cases where Meet ran a little long and Make only was like 20-30 minutes. And so we thought, okay, maybe we should we consulted with each other and we're like, okay, we'll make sure that we don't skip share next week. So it's something that you might revisit your goals, as you change the activities or the structure, but also really check in with your facilitation team. Because sometimes when you think that things are not going well, someone else might say like, actually, no, I think things are going well. And so you might continue to stick with it, or they might agree with you and you decide, let's change it.
Yeah. So the last thing to keep in mind before we wrap up is that the Google Plus community will remain open for forever. So if you have questions or resources or things to bring up with the group, please feel free to use the community however you see fit.
Cool. So it's time to go into our breakout groups. And so like before, if you have general questions about family creative learning, join Franklin's session. Otherwise, if you have very specific implementation questions, join the other sessions. But really, any of us can answer any question, and feel free to jump around between the sessions.
We'll see you there.
See you.